many of you have been here before, sitting in a meeting or around the break room table when a subject like politics comes up at a conversation and suddenly the air in the room just shifts. Some voices get sharper while others may shut down completely. And if you disagree, you can feel like there's a target on your back. In fact, according to SHRM's most recent Civility Index research, nearly 74% of U.S. workers indicated they had personally experienced or witnessed acts of incivility just over the past month. That's a lot. So, what if it didn't have to be that way? What if disagreements, even political ones, could be faced with diplomacy instead of hostility? Civility isn't about pretending we agree on everything. It's really about empathy and respecting one another even when we don't agree. Storytelling can be a powerful tool in humanizing communication and contributing to a workplace culture where everyone feels seen, heard, and even understood. Applying storytelling strategies like the intentional use of personal narratives, experiences, or examples to communicate ideas, share values, and build empathy can help you approach inevitable workplace disagreements with civility and even facilitate civil discussions among your colleagues. Here to guide us through this conversation today is Roy Abdo, Chief Executive Officer of Digital Revamp, an agency specializing in brand building for executive thought leaders. Welcome to All Things Work, Roy.
Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you for the great introduction. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Me as well. This is a big discussion, but I think we have not really dove into how storytelling can be part of this. So I'm fascinated to hear what you have to say because you are the expert in storytelling. You've worked with everyone from Fortune 500 companies to nonprofit organizations, including here at SHRM, to create impactful messaging. So Roy, in workplaces, sometimes people may struggle with challenges such as misunderstandings, which we know a lot of them can be based on, or unintentional exclusion, defensiveness during those disagreements, or even difficulty expressing differing viewpoints respectfully. We know that there is a line across. We know that this could be challenging just because we're human beings. So, why do you think storytelling is so effective in overcoming the common challenges individuals face when striving for that civility in the workplace?
And if you think it through, our civilization grew on stories. And even if you think the best thing that helped us get through life was the stories we were told from even the Old Testament to the Bible to everything around us is a story. And there's a common distinction now that we have a higher intellectual abilities as humans. We're able to analyze data and stuff, and we believe that data is going to drive decisions. I'm a big believer of people connect with people, and people buy stories. They don't buy products, because from a simple baseline, anybody can have another phone, but it takes the story telling of Apple to make it the iPhone. And the way I think of it through is, and when it comes to our day-to-day communication, is the story helps you do three things. It helps people lower their defenses. It helps surface the value, not just the position, and also it creates a shared memory. And those three things are key for people to connect with you, because when people lower their defenses through the story, they're listening in. There's a mystery element in the story. Where's it going to go with this? So incivility comes down because you're trying to understand the other person perception on something and his perspective on something. And the
Right.
second thing is it helps surface the value and not just the position.
Mhm.
By that, I mean is a lot of times we just, we go hard on a deadline. We must ship by Friday. Okay.
Right.
And someone's going to get defensive on this because, I mean, there's so many things I'm trying to do to ship something by Friday. And
Mhm.
what if we switch the narrative to, I'm trying to protect our customers' trust, and I don't want to get our customer disappointed. How can we get to
Mhm.
a place to ship on Friday? So the same ask, I just layered something else with it. So it moved me from to position from position to value. Talk about the value of why I'm saying something. And I think to me, the most important thing, the shared memory. Uh, you know, a 60-second story sharing something that happened with you with somebody connects at a different level than, here's why you need to do something.
Right. I love that. Yes. And I think what's important to really keep in mind throughout this episode for our audience is storytelling is just one form of communication. And it's getting the other person to understand better without, like you said, getting that defensiveness there. Because everybody's going through everything. We're all going through something. So it's good to keep that communication line open in a form of storytelling. It really helps. So, um, you talked about how storytelling can be used as a tool tell people express their needs and perspectives in more of a healthier, inclusive way. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I think to me is when I think about when we think about storytelling, is we're always thinking, this person did this person did Y. When I think about to create an inclusive story in the workplace, we have to be intentional about the words we're using. For example, you walk into a meeting and you say, "Hey guys, guess what? There's other people than guys. So what if we switch it to folks?"
Exactly.
Or our a chairman. Okay, what is it? What about a chairperson?
Mhm.
There's so many things in the workplace, or even think from a baseline. I was having this conversation with another client, thinking from a level, why we even use the word bullet points? Like, do you really want to talk about bullets in a meeting?
Oh, never thought
So
of it that way.
think from a perspective of, okay, here's a list of items we need to discuss. That creates, a different civil way of discussing something, a positive language. So instead of thinking of a target to me, it's like a negative word. What do you think about a goal? A goal is a more positive word. So it's our job and it's our responsibility to start thinking from the words we use and the weight they carry in a room and the impact they have on someone. Because, like you said, everybody's living their own story, and you don't know. I don't know what happened with you to get here. You might have been stuck in traffic. Your kid might have been sick or something, or you had some troubles somewhere. So being more mindful of someone's story or what they had to go through to get here is going to create a more inclusive workplaces uh, in our workplace today.
It's really the small things, and it's hard to pay attention to that, but I think we as humans have a job to pay attention to that. I think it's super important. So thank you for breaking that down. And you recently spoke at our SHRM 25 conference in San Diego, and like many of your speaking engagements, you make the distinction between perspective versus perception. Let's break down the difference between the two. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the best things that I think I only learned that about, I think, 5 years ago when I was going through
Mhm.
one of the books on communication and persuasion. The minute you're having an argument with someone, it's not the actual argument. There's your point of view and there's their point of view. And what happens is, what we understand from somebody is the perception of what they're saying. So in reality, our perception is built on what? Our past experiences, our past journey, our day, how it was, how we're hearing what they're saying, not what they're actually saying. So that's the perception of someone. And then the minute we feel attacked is because of some sort of either an insecurity or a past experience or a past trauma or a past assumption or an assumption that we had in our past experiences. Because think of it this way, you're the product of your upbringing. Today you're sitting here, but you're the product of what you went through, what kind of books you read, the experiences you've had, the people you interacted with, the reflections you've done. And it gets you to a place where to have certain perceptions on things. So this person is saying something and you hear it from your own perception. So the minute I sense a misunderstanding, instead of rallying up because it's triggering some sort of insecurity or assumptions in my mind, I pause and I notice that and I choose to ask questions. And questions help me understand the perspective of the other person. Because the perspective of the other person does not necessarily mean how I'm perceiving it. So there's a big distinction between perception of something and the perspective on something. And I think it would reduce a lot of incivility in the workplace if more people take time to pause and notice and choose to ask question, choose to more clarification, to understand if somebody actually mean negatively on something or it's just a matter of bringing our own past experiences to something.
And it comes down culturally too, and that's really great to understand the distinction. I feel like this goes way beyond the workplace, guys. For everybody tuning into this episode, this also feels kind of like a therapy session. This is great. Okay, so
I mean, listen, like on this note, on the therapy session, I in the SHRM talk, SHRM 2025 conversation that I did, I made a bit. I mean, I kind of made a statement on what is it actually we're looking for in the workplace today. If you think about it, evolutionary as a human, what was it? Food, shelters, right? And a relationship. This is what we looked for to evolve. And how do you translate that in today's workplace? In the workplace today is your job is the food. So, and then the relationship you have are still a relationship, and the shelter is your home. So in reality is you want to also have the psychological safety to thrive in the workplace. And what is psychological safety is the ability to express your opinion, the ability to contribute on things, the ability to have different thought on something. And what happens is sometimes evolutionary, we haven't been taught to name our feelings when we're what we're going through. And the example that I gave is let's think of a baby, Anne. If a baby has needs, what do?
They cry.
It's actually they don't cry, they scream.
Oh,
Have you thought about it? Do you see the tears coming down? It's just screaming.
that's true.
So we have this tendency as human to still scream when our needs are not met. And we haven't learned that we have the capacity for language as adults to communicate, to understand the other perspective and perception on something. And I think to me, that's been a big win when we're working on with organizations, creating the language and giving them labels, naming our feelings. And this kind of how does it translate to the workplace? When we help organizations with their employment brand, we work a lot on the frames of what defines your culture. How do you handle conflict? How do you appreciate someone? Giving labels and names enables people to have frameworks for things.
I mean, I think we all tried to learn that. And I think the kids who are learning this now are going to be a wonderful future for the new generations in the workforce. Hey everyone, we'll get right back into the conversation. But first, did you know SHRM has resources to help you support civility in the workplace? For SHRM members tuning into this episode, we have an exciting bonus, the SHRM Civility Starter Kit. In it, you'll find helpful tools like a practical guide for leaders and managers to equip their teams with the skills to practice civil conversations at work, plus a political conversations playbook and Cards Against Incivility, printable interactive cards designed to help spark civil conversations with your colleagues. If you're watching, just click the link above to get instant access or find the link in this episode's description. The Civility Starter Kit is just one of the many benefits of being a SHRM member, so don't miss out on this helpful resource to champion a culture of civility and respect in your workplace. Now, back to the episode. Okay, let's jump into our next segment. I'd love to explore a few real world scenarios and get your insights on how individuals can use storytelling to navigate incivility at work. Let's start off with something casual, simple like a disagreement. So, this is one scenario. Hannah is in a team meeting discussing a new project strategy, and she has a suggestion about streamlining a process. Her colleague, Sandra, strongly disagrees with her suggestion, says, I just don't think that'll work. We've all heard that in work before. After a few minutes of a bit back and forth, the conversation starts to feel just a bit tense, and the room is dividing into camps. You hit rewind on the scene to go back to the very moment Sandra disagrees, and instead she gives Hannah some thoughtful advice, which is nice. So, what are some creative ways she could redo this conversation to shift it into a more civil direction?
I mean, the scenario you gave is just common in the workplace. We have one way of doing something, and then the other partners wants to do something. And a lot of times do you know the best way to convince somebody with something? Do you know what it is?
In my opinion, kind of laying a picture out, painting a picture for them.
Okay, because in reality, you don't convince somebody with something, what you said. You want them to convince themselves.
Right. Okay.
So the idea behind it is the framework that I would have used for this conversation is what's the outcome you're trying to achieve? How do you believe this would help us to get to that outcome? How about this other way of doing something and related to that perspective? Because, once you find yourself in a place where you have an opposite view on something, the worst thing you could do is just go head to head with somebody, because it's going to be what? The struggle game. You win, I win, you win or lose. But in reality, it's not you against me, it's us against the problem. And I think unless you move with your narrative and your questions and your curiosity to the us part, you will always have a head-to-head bump in the situation where in the workplace, it's my narrative versus your narrative. All right, but how can we achieve a common goal? Okay, here's what you're thinking and here's what I'm thinking, but here's what we're trying to actually achieve.
You know, it's so funny. I think I'm attentive to the way I present myself and scenarios and how I communicate with my colleagues and my managers. And I'm just even learning on a personal note, just I have even a lot more work to do, a lot more to pay attention to.
I think it's just we're all work in progress. But the way I look at it is, we bring in everything we've gone through to every single meeting and every single conversation, and we forget that the other person has no understanding or whatsoever what we've been through. So I think if the biggest thing that's going to help incivility go lower and more civility rise is we come in with curiosity, we come in with questions, we come in with understanding perspective. Similar to the example that I just gave.
So the next scenario would be Maria is at lunch with Colin and praising a YouTube video she recently saw criticizing new environmental regulations. This, of course, strikes a chord with Colin, who's very passionate about the environment and strongly disagrees with Maria's viewpoint. As Colin keeps raising his voice, Maria begins to grow visibly uncomfortable, like a lot of people get in that scenario. And so, Roy, if you overheard this conversation and you wanted to step in to de escalate this situation, what are some techniques in the storytelling world that would help you put this into action?
I mean, I think it's going to come down to the same almost framework. I would say number one is ask to learn. What is it that she's finding exciting? And even though you might disagree with something, but you could share a lived moment from why you have your perspective on something. Because think of it this way: she's agreeing on this because of her own perspective of reality,
Yes.
and you're looking at it from your own perception of her reality. So,
Hmm.
what's going to help a lot in this conversation to be brought closer is let me tell you how I believed what I believed, which is completely, doesn't align with what you're saying right now, but here's where it came from. And I think the best thing that I always recommend is stop and time out. When some things get heated, we lose the capacity of rational thinking when we get too emotional on something. Because even think of it from a perspective of, even when we're thinking we're rational, we're emotional in our rationality. Because I think 80 or 90% of our decisions are just emotional. And I would say pausing is a big important factor to de-escalate a conversation, de-escalate things. And I would say it's just I tell to my students, and you're gonna laugh at this. Uh, I would say no one cares. Like literally, no one cares. You have so much. You sometimes you get so rallied into something, but in reality, like no one cares if that's way or the other way. What actually we're trying to do, each one of us, we're trying to wake up every day, go to work, do a good job, help the world, come back to our family, have some good, decent life. It's food, shelter, and relationship. Like this is what you're really looking for. And how do we get there? Sometimes we get into the argument, but let's remember why we're doing something.
Yeah, we all have the same goals at the end of the day, really. So if you were a manager and you overheard this, would that change your approach at all as somebody kind of part of a leadership position?
Yeah, I would say as managers and as leaders, we have to contain the conversation. We can't, there's no reason why whatsoever somebody should be screaming at somebody. Like we're not in the age of barbaric humanities and stuff. We all have the capacity for language. We have the capacity for comprehension, pausing and breathing, do a 5 minute breather. Like I literally in my team, I say, okay, let's take 5 deep breaths collectively. There's magic that happens mentally when we all sync our energies together. And I think for us to get to a place where we have a common ground, we see the same thing. Breathing is a very important small exercise that we were never taught to do growing up. We just do it
No.
naturally.
Yeah,
So I
exactly.
think as a manager, I would probably, if I saw this kind of heated conversation, I'll have a, you know, I'll put them both in the same room and I'll discuss, okay, why this thing matters to you? And here's why it matters to them. But in reality, we have to, we cannot eliminate one each other in the world. We have to learn how to coexist,
Exactly.
because, and I think sometimes we just take it to heart. I'm like, I'm trying to do this and trying to do that. Okay, great. But for what and for who on the expense of what?
Awesome. So we're going to switch gears here into a different scenario. I'm
Okay.
going to throw all these scenarios at you, Roy. So in 2025, we now have 5 different generations in the workplace, and each can have their own set of values, working styles, and ways of communicating. You mentioned this before. It's the way we were raised, it's how we were brought up. It's very different when it comes to generations as well. So let's say there's a team collaborating on a project. David, a senior leader who's been at the company for 25 plus years, prefers formal styles of communication via email. Carlos, who's a manager of about 6 years into his career, so he's a little younger, is used to quick text based messages to get answers. I know for me in the middle, I've definitely done both. So when a simple request turns into a misunderstanding, frustration can build on both sides because they both prefer a different method. So let's pause the scenario. Let's press that button right there to analyze what's going on here. Starting with David, how could he look at this through a creative lens and offer suggestions to make sure his needs are met while also respecting Carlos's needs?
The thing that I want to think about is, why do you communicate, Anne?
To achieve a goal together.
Okay, but what is it from your personal lens internally? What is it important for you when you say something? Why do you communicate with your teammates? What's the objective of this?
Well, I just want to make sure we're always on the same page and that we are, making sure we're all successful in getting our goal done by the end of the day. That's
Okay,
my
and
goal.
then what's the one level why behind it is safety,
Mm-hmm.
because that gives you the sense of safety that you're understood, you're on the same page with everybody, and you're all
Yes.
aligned to go to the same place.
Right.
So what are you actually craving when you're communicating? We're craving this, we're trying to tap into the safety mode of the conversation to make sure that we're good here. We're not gonna hit the wall by not being on the same page. And I think when you think of the different generations in the workplace, each come with their what do they define as safe space? The longer form, the person who's been the traditionalist versus the baby boomer. Each one of us understood safety from a different lens of communication style. So for us is the quick instant gratification. For them is the longer detailed email with listed points and everything like that. For somebody else is the video call because they just feel more connected on something. So it's a matter of understanding what makes someone feel safe, seen, and heard. Safe, seen, and heard. And then the way I think about it from the scenario you gave me, there's a younger manager, there's an older manager, but I think that all those individuals, I don't think we're spending enough time teaching the different generation in the workplace how to communicate in each other's safety language. I think we're not talking, we're not learning how to communicate with each other, but in reality, language is a safety tool that we lean on and we rely on there. And I think to the point that you were making is on the Carlos and the younger manager and the older worker. In the presentation that I gave at the annual conference, I literally gave 5 different template emails for each generation. For example, somebody who's been in the workplace for 30 years, you want to open up the email with something like, we value your experience in the workplace. You're going to bring a depth of the knowledge or something, versus somebody young coming in, roll up your sleeve and send me a Slack message if you need anything. Because each of them grew up in a different modern era. That's how they felt the safety and
Mm-hmm.
connected with the safety.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Is that too
exactly.
crazy of an idea? No.
Yeah, no, I understand because I think Jim Link, our CHRO here at SHRM, also calls the younger generation, digital natives. People are just more used to certain technologies. They find comfort in it versus others for other generations. So it's also like that, like you said, that safe space for communication to ensure that everything's going through as well and everybody's on the same page. Now, there's so much more to this conversation we can discuss that goes beyond a person-to-person conversation. For instance, if you're a member of HR, how do you go about promoting civility through the organization's internal communications? For our SHRM members, we have some extra special bonus content where Roy breaks that down for you. Just follow the link in our description. That'll do it for this week. We'll catch you next time. If you enjoyed our conversation today, be sure to subscribe wherever you enjoy your podcast so you never miss a new episode. Also, did you know All Things Work is more than a podcast? That's right, we're also a weekly newsletter that includes in-depth articles and the latest research from SHRM to keep you in the know. Just head to shrm.org/allthingswork to sign up. Plus, follow SHRM on social media to view the latest clips and join the conversation on game-changing topics that are redefining the world of work.
SHRM.